for a change?
I am talking to you.
Then get ready to explore the quantum possibilities. It's time to transform that outdated paradigm into something universal and new. Time to uncover the truth hidden beneath the veil of lies. A time to think outside the box as we link to a higher consciousness. Welcome to the awakening. And now the hosts of Broadcast Team Alpha, Nori Love and Augie Nost.
Well, hello, radiant beings with impeccable immune systems. So I'm putting the affirmation and the intentions out there for all of us. If you're in agreement, you can just let the universe know that you're in agreement. But what a great time this is to have an impeccable immune system. And, you know, it begins with the intention. It begins with us saying it. And, you know, our cells are listening, so they will comply. So how are you guys? Really excited to be here tonight. We have a returning guest that Augie's going to tell you about. But first, I would just like to thank you for being here. Thank you for the donations. Here's how that goes for us. We have a contract and we pay our contract monthly, and we get an email and it says, you got X amount of donations, so your monthly contract is only this. And I'm like, oh, Augie, look what we got. It's like Christmas for us. So that's how that goes for us when you hit the subscribe button and the donate button. So thank you so much. The donate button, I was thinking of something else. So we really do appreciate that. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you in the chat room. And we just appreciate your presence, and in the craziness of everything that's going on in the world right now, how nice it is just to come together and have cutting edge conversations and to join with like intention for positive outcomes. And I just wanted to invite you to one other thing we're doing. Augie and I are doing the Mastermind Connection on Patreon. And if you email us at themastermindconnection@gmail.com, I will send you the link if you would like to join us for this Sunday's Mastermind Connection. We meet every Sunday. It's a group of people who believe in the power of the mind and the power of intention. And we meet on Sunday at 2 p.m. on Eastern. And we meet for a collective intention, whether it's health or well-being. We've actually done a little something on the coronavirus. So if you email us at themastermindconnection@gmail.com, I'll send you the Zoom link so you can join us on Sunday. And there's all kinds of other really, really cool things going on there. So I've taken up all of my time. Augie?
No.
Quite.
You could continue for another little bit here.
I want to get to Adam. I'm excited to talk with him.
Yeah, me too. And I tell you, we have a pearl for you today. We have Professor Adam Oliver Stokes with us. And he is one of those rare teachers that have stepped outside of the box and looking around to try to find out what is there. And his specialty is looking at history. Why is the written history books not according to all the evidence that we find when we start digging in the dirt and looking into old records and stuff like that? There is a disconnect somewhere. And he is one of those strange people that ask the question, why? Okay. See, a little bit about Adam here. He holds a degree from Duke University and Yale Divinity School on religious and biblical studies. He understands several languages, including Hebrew and ancient Greek, Latin, and German, and writes on lectures on ancient cultures and civilizations with a special interest in ancient American civilization and the giants of the Americas. And I'm sure he added the giants of the world with it because they are found everywhere. Now, his work is published in many journals and publications around the world. He is also a featured guest on many podcasts and radio shows, and he has a book out, which I absolutely want us to tell us about, because all I've seen so far is, I think it's fairly new, and I've seen the front cover, and I love it. So, and he's here to tell us what's behind the curtain of ancient American history and world history. And oh gosh, we've been talking too long here. Now let's welcome Professor Stokes to the show. Welcome here.
Hi, Adam.
Hello, Nori. Hello,
Yay.
Aggie. Great to be here.
Oh,
I've been
so
looking
good to
forward
have
to
you.
this since I talked to Aggie a few weeks ago.
Yay. So good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, gosh, you know, when it talks about ancient history, it goes back a long way, almost back to the beginning of time, I think. Just why in the world is there such a disconnect, or where do you want to start explaining this so that simple people like me can understand it?
Well, I think, Aggie, that's a really great question. For myself, I feel like, and not just myself, but I think other researchers would say this as well, other scholars would say this as well, it's really kind of the fault of the Enlightenment, starting in the 17th and 18th centuries, which was really kind of a response to organized religion, which basically was kind of this dictatorship in the West, in Europe especially, at this time. And so people, you know, they kind of threw what I like to call, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. So the Bible talks about, you know, events taking place way, way, way in humanity's past. It talks about a massive flood, which is attested to not just in the Bible, but in nearly every culture, Asian culture, other Near Eastern cultures, Native American cultures, that's attested to everywhere. But because the Bible at that time was kind of being used to, you know, oppress basically everyone outside of the priestly class of the Roman Catholic Church, the Enlightenment kind of pushed back and tried to find basically different ways of explaining history that kind of got around the Bible. So we get things that pop up at this time, like the Ice Age, quote unquote, which is really kind of a secular response to the flood account, trying to dismiss the flood account and instead proposing an ice age, which as researchers, even in modern day 21st century researchers are seeing, the ice age theory is starting to fall apart. We get Darwinism in the 19th century, the theory of evolution, even though, as Will Hart notes, scientists, biologists will say, Stephen Jay Gould said this himself, we don't have a transitional record. Now, I'm not trying to promote any type of creationism here. I mean, that gets kind of problematic, but the archaeological record shows that humans were always human, and not just when Homo sapiens arrived, but way, way, way before that. And if you look at Hindu tradition, Indian tradition, human beings go back almost to millions of years. And if you look at not just the oral evidence, the written traditions that have come down, but also the archaeological evidence, and Michael Cremo has done a lot of this as well, we have bones of humans who appear to be, you know, fully developed, not like a lower strand of human being that go back millions of years. So sorry to rant about that. It was probably a longer answer than you wanted.
Yeah, where do you think it actually starts?
That's a great question. I think it starts, and here I'm just going to put on my Zachariah Stitchin hat. And I think the last time we talked, you know, I said that, you know, in regards to the giants of North America, I don't believe that they're UFOs per se, but I think the evidence is irrefutable that some race or group from another galaxy, from another planet, came millions of years ago and founded and started the process of creating human beings. And I say creation deliberately, which you don't have to take from a religious perspective. There are groups that argue for creation from a non-religious perspective, but a race of people from far, far away who created human beings millions of years ago. And I think Zecharia Sitchin, I think he hit that right on the head. That basically you have in the written traditions of all people, but more specifically Near Eastern writers, you have this tradition of these beings that have been misinterpreted. Zecharia Sitchin was absolutely right about this, misinterpreted as supernatural beings, but were really aliens or extraterrestrials. And I think that goes back to millions of years, and they continue to influence our behavior and our advancement.
I totally agree with you, because I ran the numbers on the Zecharia Sitchin through his writings, and I came that 399,000 years ago, there were these beings that splashed down in the Arabian Sea, swam to shore, and they created this first little village in a place called Eden. Well, isn't that pretty close to Eden?
Eden.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, I'm glad you mentioned that, Augie, because people will look at the accounts in the Bible, the accounts in the Sumerian records, and just say, this is all mythology. And I think Sitchin did an excellent job of, taking the text literally. No, these are actual genealogies. These people actually lived this long, and like you said, this goes back hundreds and thousands of years. So I think that, ironically, with the Enlightenment pushing for kind of a mythological approach to the Bible, and I think that was a necessary corrective to kind of the oppression that religion was causing at the time, but in pushing for that kind of allegorical or mythical interpretation, they missed the literalness, which informs us about where we ultimately come from.
Yeah, and the thing is also that when you start looking at these old records, they are poo-pooed by the establishment because it doesn't fit their agenda.
Yep.
Because I think there is something here that somehow the education system and the people that write history books, they hate to be proven wrong. They just don't want to be proven wrong.
Well, there's a whole system now. I mean, there's a whole machine now at play. I mean, when Darwin proposed the theory of evolution back in the 1860s, that wasn't the staple of, Western biology, but now it is. Now the concept of an ice age is, for science and for geology. So to really rattle that up, you're going to be rattling like a lot of things, shaking a lot of people up. And I think there's a lot at stake here to force, scholars, to reevaluate what academia has done for the past 200 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And the theory of the ice age, there is some evidence to it, I think, in certain places. But then again, in northern Siberia and northern Norway, there is evidence of humanoids or humans and animals that is found at ground level. If it was a quarter of a mile of ice on top of it,
they should be together.
They should be hanging around in the ice up there and not at ground level.
Yeah, and I think that there is proof for an ice age on a lesser scale, but I think that the theory in general, certainly the way it's been promoted in Western academia as this, massive ice age, is basically a response to, like I said earlier, the biblical account of the flood, and kind of trying to dismiss all of that. And I get, like I said, the impetus behind that with what religion was doing at the time. But like I said, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because I think with the flood we have, as other religions and other ancient texts attest to, an actual race memory of an event that happened.
Yeah. Boy, it gets complicated too when you start challenging the status quo.
Oh yes.
These guys doesn't like to get challenged.
Yeah, I mean, you hear all the time, Augie, of people losing their tenure, losing their jobs, even if they promote something that goes in any way against the traditional model. It's interesting, and I've mentioned this before on other podcasts, but there's a kind of fundamentalism within academia that, ironically, modern academia rose to combat the fundamentalism of religion, but there's a kind of a fundamentalism that modern academia has in and of itself. I remember last year where these scholars from Harvard published a paper about the possibility of extraterrestrials visiting this planet in a mainstream journal, and they just got lambasted for it. I don't know if they lost tenure, but just veering off of that model and suggesting even the possibility of that, for which there's a lot of evidence for, made them kind of anathema in academia.
Boy, that when you look at the history books, they if you take the word history, break it up, what you end up with was his story.
Mm-hmm.
How come we couldn't make it our story? The real story.
Yeah. Well, I think that, in recent times, there has definitely been a pushback to try and get, the true story of human development and human history out there. I mean, scholars like Will Hart, Daniel Lewis, Graham Hancock, John Major Jenkins, Robert Hoagland. I think, and these are, well-established names, people who are, very knowledgeable in their field. And I think that there is that pushback. And I think even pop culture with shows like Ancient Aliens and those type of shows are kind of bringing a pushback and getting people to, question this traditional model that they've been given. And I think that that's a very, very good thing. I don't think 20 years ago, Augie and Nori, I don't think that would ever have happened.
I totally agree. And but still, though, even those very familiar names have very difficult. It's a difficult thing to get into the history books and have any kind of change, because it seems like whoever is publishing the history books, they're holding the rope at both ends and the loop of it.
Yeah. Our conversation here makes me think of kind of the impetus that's arisen in recent years of traveling to Mars and seeing what they have. And I know Hoagland argued that there was a whole civilization on Mars. Effectively, I think very credibly argued that there was a whole civilization that may have influenced human civilization. But I think government and academia are so tied up together. Even if people get to Mars, they're only going to show you, Aki, what they want you to see, which is frustrating. So I think, and you mentioned something, I remember in the film that you did, just the need to really push that disclosure. I remember you saying that, if you were the president of the United States, just keep pushing, get to where you can get that disclosure. I think, that if that doesn't come from the president, I think it has to come from us, really just pushing for, revealing, disclosing, what's really going on. And I think in that way, they, government and academia can't really dictate the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. When it really comes, if we are having a peek behind the curtain, who or what do you think actually is the deciding factor of keeping ancient history hidden from us?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Because I don't know, I figured I'd ask you.
I think, at the end of the day, the world governments are kind of the main culprit. Just this lack of this resistance to disclosing anything. And I think that there is a fear that if there is disclosure, I think the people at the top know exactly what's going on. Everything that we've talked about, the development of, human civilization, that humans go back millions and millions of years, way before Darwinian theory claims that they did. I think the people in the know that. But there's a fear that, what will this do to the world if they know this history? Will people panic? I don't actually, you know what? I don't even think that it's a fear that people will panic. I think it's a fear that people will probably unite and become united in a way that we've never seen before. And all of our conflicts, racial conflicts, ethnic conflicts, etc., will come to an end, which means, these governments will be out of a job. So I think that's the fear, and the governments have control of, the academies, the universities, the colleges. They get their funding from the government. A lot of them get their funding from the government. The titles they get are from the government. So they're not going to say anything that goes against that traditional narrative. And I think, the greatest example of this, even though I like a lot of their work, is the Smithsonian. When you deal with, ancient American history, I mentioned this before. Mm-hmm. Smithsonian is, a government institution. And the government had, especially in the 19th century, a particular narrative that they wanted to push about Native Americans. And they were able to successfully push that narrative through use of academic institutions and through the Smithsonian as kind of the academic scholarly arm of the government. And I think this goes on basically all over the place. And I think the people in charge, even when you do have people in high positions who say, well, something else is going on here, let's disclose this, you have other people who are pushing back. I remember a few years ago, the former Prime Minister of Canada basically came out and said, aliens, UFOs, aliens exist. They've been coming here for probably thousands, if not millions of years. Let's talk about this. Let's get a symposium about this. And it was quietly just brushed under the rug. And it was kind of a pretty big deal. I mean, this is the Prime Minister of Canada, for heaven's sake. So, but kind of pushed under the rug by other people in power.
Yeah, that was a form of disclosure that was just ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah, how can it get any better than that? Because somebody that did have the inside information at that level of government, he came out and said, hey, they're here. And now I see we got 1 minute left to the break. And we got to remember, when it comes to history, there's a saying out there saying that whoever wins the war writes history.
Indeed.
So we got to think on that too. And let's go to break, and we will come back talking with Professor Stokes afterwards and talk more about ancient history and get more specific. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Broadcast Team Alpha Show, hosted by Nori Love and Augie Nost. The one show that takes your doubts of the unknown and spins them into reality. Share your thoughts by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More cutting-edge conversation and exploration of the quantum universe after this. Immerse yourself in an epic journey through time, where ancient mysteries unfold within a story of love and betrayal, as well as a battle of good versus evil in The Emissary Book 1. The reader's favorite gold medal award winner for Visionary Fiction 2019, the action and adventure of The Emissary continues in The Emerald Tablet, Book 2. The 2019's Bronze Medal Award winner, The Emissary and The Emerald Tablet by Tamara Veach and Rennie DeFazio are both available now on Amazon.com. Let your reading adventure begin.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. In an out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about. At least, not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and test us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Great. It's great. I think it's great. I think it's
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
great. Please make a note of it. It's great.
Looking for a radio show like no other?
We need something brand new.
Then tune into the KCOR Digital Radio Network, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and get ready for The Quantum Shift. A great shift of consciousness is sweeping across the Earth. Are you ready for the dimensional shift?
It is amazing, is it not?
The Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Hosted by Dr. Sam Muggsy and Kent Dunn. Be part of the fifth dimensional reality, where consciousness prevails and the universal law of one is the only true reality. The Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Going live.
Come explore the quantum possibilities. This is Broadcast Team Alpha.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
To be on the show live, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Share your thoughts of the show on Twitter at KCOR Radio, #KCOR. Or join the cutting edge conversation live in our chat room at KCORradio.com. Now back to Broadcast Team Alpha with your free thinking hosts, Nori Love and Augie Nas.
Yay, we're back. So, during the break, I asked the question that I've been wanting to ask, but now I'm going to ask it on the air. Is Jesus a Pleiadian, Adam?
I absolutely love that question. That's probably one of the best questions that's ever been asked me before. So I love talking about this. So I'll just put it out there beforehand. Personally, I am a deeply religious, I am a deeply spiritual person. I'm part of the RLDS tradition, Reorganized Latter-day Saint tradition. But for myself, I see no discrepancy between angels and aliens. If you were to open your Bible and write down 10 things about the beings who are described as angels or malakim in the Hebrew, and then you compared it with 10 things that people write down about modern aliens, it would be the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So that an angel, that one would equate angel with an alien, that's absolutely no problem with. I have absolutely no problem with that. And in fact, in the scriptures of my religious tradition, in a book called the Book of Moses, not to be confused with the 5 books of Moses that make up the Torah or the Pentateuch, God talks about creating multiple worlds, and that Jesus has been sent to show love and preach the doctrine of peace to all of these different worlds. So that's a part of my own religious tradition. And so I preface all of that to say, in answer to your question, Nori, heck yes, I think that Jesus was a Pleiadian or came from another planet. And the scriptures, both the New Testament and those books, which I had a great conversation with Augie about this a couple of months ago, those books that the Catholic Church decided to kick out, even though they were ridiculously popular among the Christian community, seem to attest to this. So in the Gospel of John, Jesus says over and over again, I'm not of this world. And then when Jesus goes, when you have the Last Supper, Jesus says, I'm going to another world where I'm going to prepare a place for you. That's always taken supernaturally. But I think the context and the Greek make it pretty clear that he's actually talking about another world, another planet. And the Gnostic scriptures, which I absolutely love, the Gospel of John, the Gospel of Mary, a lot of those books that were attributed to women that got kicked out of the Bible, Jesus and the other disciples, Judas Iscariot, for example, who in the Gnostic text is best friends with Jesus, they all say, we weren't born here in this world. We come from other planets. Ionon in the Greek, literally, very explicitly, another planet, another world. So that's within the religious text itself. And if you look at the birth stories of Jesus in Matthew and Luke from a non-supernatural perspective, it's kind of clear that extraterrestrial beings were involved. And if you look at the doctrine of Jesus, his preachings of peace and love and basically unity amongst all peoples, so not just preaching to Jews but also to Gentiles, and asking the disciples to continue that mission to Gentiles. That theme of unity is right in line with what you'll read with the Palladians, Ashtar, and the like.
Wow.
Yeah, that gets interesting. And since we're already talking about the Bible and those books that you mentioned, those were in the original. They were included in the original draft to the Bible created in 325 in Constantinople, or Nicaea at the time. And they were even kept in that draft all the way up to the Council of Hippo, when they actually decided that, we're going to make this an official religion now to unify the Roman Empire. Of course, that didn't last long shortly after it collapsed.
Yeah. I always tell my students, I teach high school Latin, and my background's in ecclesiastical Latin and Greek. And so I'll have them from time to time read little portions from the Vulgate. I teach at a public school, so I don't have them read the references to God. So it'll just be from Israelite history. And I tell them the only freaking reason that you're reading this right now is because a Roman emperor approved of this Latin text. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed like most of our classical literature was destroyed by the church. So thank the Roman emperor for this. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the final canon of the Catholic Church is not really decided until the Council of Trent, because even between the Council of Hippo and the Council of Trent in the 16th or 17th century, people such as the Waldensians and the Cathars, they're still turning to these ancient, these texts that haven't officially been included by the Roman Catholic Church, and still turning to these texts and kind of getting a different perspective on Jesus and Jesus's message and teaching, rather than what you get with the official New Testament. And I think there was an agenda going on there, kind of going back to our discussion in the first half of, human history. If you say that Jesus comes not to die on a cross, but to bring knowledge and enlightenment and unity to people, and that this is really a message that, people have been sending to that beings outside of Earth, extraterrestrial beings have been sending to humans for as long as time immemorial. If you change that with a different message that Jesus died on the cross, and in order to be saved, you have to find your salvation through the official church, then you're kind of basically setting up a system that allows you to basically oppress and rule everything. And if you think that, the Pope or the leader of the church is the highest authority, you're going to submit to that rather than thinking for yourself or thinking outside the box and realizing that there's a larger history, there's a different understanding of history in the world than what the church is teaching you.
Yeah. Boy, this gets deep.
Yes, it does indeed.
Yeah, and I see a question in the chat room here. The question is Ra the ultimate creator?
Well, there's something really interesting. That's a really good question. So Ra is the god of the sun in Egyptian cosmology and Egyptian religion. And the sun for the Egyptians was a disk. But we have, if you look at the hieroglyphics and the images that we have in Egyptian pyramids, and Egyptologists who love to deny everything can't deny this. You have these discs that are clearly flying saucers. You have them kind of at a flat angle, so you're seeing the whole entire disc, and you have them at a side angle, and it looks exactly like a flying saucer.
Yeah.
And if you are an ancient person and you see this bright disc shining towards you, you're going to think that that is, the sun. So I think that whatever those discs I actually think the discs represent extraterrestrial beings who came down and basically, interacted with early Egypt, helped them to build their civilization. They didn't build it for them, but, at least gave them some knowledge to build that civilization. If you read the book Black Genesis by Robert Bauval, he kind of hints at this idea. And I think that the Egyptians equated in their mindset that shining disc, that shining UFO disc with the sun. So I think at the end of the day, yes, Ra would be the creator of the universe, as I think the extraterrestrials created us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then if we look at the Christian faith, and tongue in cheek here, I'm saying that they're still praying to Ra, because Ra, his first name was Amen Ra. And when the Christians are done praying, they say Amen. So they are still praying to the sun god.
Well, there's a direct connection between basically the tradition that Christianity comes out of Judaism and this worship of the sun. So Moses, around the time, the historical Moses, around the time of, scholars would date him to like 1300 BCE, which is right after Egypt itself had kind of this monotheistic surge where they worshipped only the sun. So Egypt before this time was polytheistic. Even after this time would go back to polytheism. But right before Moses, ironic, I don't think it's so ironic. I actually think there's direct influence. You have this monotheistic religion, worship of the sun. Moses raises up in the Egyptian court right around this time. So I think he gets monotheism, and other scholars have argued for this, directly from Egyptian worship of the sun god. And Christians get their monotheism from the Jews, from the Jewish tradition. So hence, I think it all goes back to Egypt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, if we... okay. You wrote a book where you talk a lot about this. And what happens when we look at ancient history? They talk about different kinds of people. They talk about the regular folks like us, but we have also had giants back there, and we see them here in the Americas or Europe, Far East. They are everywhere. Where do they fit into the ancient history?
Yes. I think that the giants, so in my book From Egypt to Ohio, I focus specifically on the giants of North America, and I trace their origin back to kind of Egypt, arguing for kind of an Egyptian-Israelite merger, which created these giants. But I think that the giants go back to the earliest civilization that humanity ever had, a civilization that was only retained slightly in the race memory of human beings who came after them. I don't think that the giants of ancient America were aliens or extraterrestrials, nor the giants of the old world, but I think they come from the earliest civilization that was started largely through the impetus of off-world beings. So I think I would equate them with kind of an Atlantean civilization that was extremely advanced technologically, but kind of through its own pride. And we see this with the giants throughout human history. Through their own pride, they fall. They basically destroy themselves. But basically, the first human civilization, and they had this knowledge that I think has been lost, but is slowly being found again. And Edgar Cayce and others talk about this, that they were able to, basically build stuff with their mind. So you look at, and I think this kind of got passed down to the giants of later centuries. So you look at in Europe, these amazing places, Stonehenge being the most famous one, but they're all over the place. Norway, England, France, Germany. Where I was in Heidelberg, there's a place called the Witch's Cove, which goes way, way back and has these stones around it. And you're wondering, how the heck did ancient people move this stuff around? Well, I think they moved it with their mind, with psychic ability. And the giants had this, and slowly we've kind of lost that. But I think they come from a civilization that, even by the time of the oral traditions you get in the Bible, in the Book of Genesis, and in Sumerian text, and in the Epic of Gilgamesh, people don't know where they came from. I think it's that old.
Wow.
Yeah. When it comes to creating things with their mind, that could even include what you see in Baalbek in Lebanon, because there is one stone that weighs 1,112, I think they said.
Yeah, it's impossible tons. To move.
And it's lifted 40 feet up and put into a wall.
Yeah. That would be impossible to do even with slave labor.
Couldn't do it.
So, yeah.
1,100 tons lifted 40 feet up and created into a wall.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah. That blows your mind when you think about something like that. And
that's a mastermind right there.
Oh yes, definitely. I was about to say. So
yeah, and that goes from there. That's telekinesis, and it goes from there to creating things with the mind. I've seen telekinesis. I mean, Nori has a spoon laying on her kitchen table, on the kitchen counter. It is curled up in a ball, and that was done with holding on to one end of the spoon, and it curled up in her hand by looking at it. Is that about right, Nori?
That's kind of how it happens.
Yeah.
The question is, were you able to uncurl the spoon?
I didn't try. Yeah, I didn't try.
And I think this all goes back to your questions earlier about what is kind of the resistance to looking at history from another perspective, a more accurate perspective. Well, I think one of the reasons is that a pushback, a resistance against finding in some way this old type of knowledge, this knowledge that has been lost, for centuries. It's easier to say, I'm going to, adhere to, this particular structure, whether it be government or religion or whatever, rather than, exploring for yourself and, finding that knowledge for yourself and gaining that enlightenment for yourself. I don't think the powers that be want that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that, actually, though, when you look at what it's been like and what it is now and what we can expect in the future, things are loosening up. People are starting to find out that, wait a minute, we have been, there's a term for it. I'm going to leave alone because we're on the air. And it's changing. People are waking up everywhere.
Yeah. Well, there's no choice now. I mean, you see this footage of, fighter jets basically, chasing down these UFOs, and and you see people, finding this evidence from, archaeology, the archaeological record showing that clearly, you look at cave paintings, clearly, we've been visited by some people who weren't, from this planet, from this world. So it's kind of changing how human history, has been understood. We're not alone. It wasn't just, some single-celled organism over billions and billion, years, morphed from a monkey into a human being. There's other stuff going on here. And if there is, microevolution on some scale, it's been, with the help of, people, not of entities, not of this world.
Yeah.
But I think, even the government can't cover it up, anymore.
It's unraveling for them.
Yeah. And I think, you talked about this. I think you posted on Facebook about disclosure. I think disclosure is going to come within the next 10 years. I don't think the governments will have a choice.
Hopefully a lot sooner than that.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so too, definitely.
Yeah, and when we're talking about giants for a second, there is a place in South America, and I forget where there, but there is a set of stairs. Each step in those stairs are 15 foot tall. I got a picture of it on one of my websites, and it's perfect steps. They are just like they are perfectly cut, but they are 15 foot tall, each step on it, up the side of a mountain.
Yes. So who's climbing these steps?
Yeah, who walked these steps?
Well, I mean, we have traditions with, the Native Americans, both North American and South American, where we have giants up to, and I think we talked about this last time, you guys had me on the show, up to like 30 feet. So, if you have a 30-foot giant, he's able to, walk those steps pretty easily. But your average human's not going to be able to do that. So that causes a conundrum. Academia wants to say, giants were just mythology. They were just part of the myth and the superstitions of the indigenous people. But archaeology, again, seems to fly in the face of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see now we have just about 5 minutes left of the show. Would you tell people where they can get a hold of you, and also what you write about in that last book you put out? It sounded so interesting.
Absolutely. So I'm found on Facebook. I also have an Instagram account where I post things, any articles, any videos, YouTube videos I can find dealing with giants, mainly in ancient America, but all over the world. So I have pictures of skeletons there that people have found, biblical evidence, archaeological evidence related to giants. And so giants is kind of my specialty. And I recently published a book, very recently, about a couple weeks ago. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle, or you can get paperback. It's called From Egypt to Ohio, a Semitic origin for the giants of North America, and basically looks at the history of giants in ancient America, and through kind of the cultural evidence that's been linked to these giants, argues for an origin for them in the Near East amongst a group of Egypto-Israelites. So looking at kind of the interaction between Egypt and Israel in the Bible, and basically how basically from that you get a lineage of giants that exists in the old world and then moves over to the new world. So the impetus for that book was really trying to look at the question of where do these giants come from? A lot of people have done awesome work on the giants of North America, noting what they were like, what their civilization was like. But when you ask where they come from, not a lot of work has been on that. So my impetus, my concern was really trying to find where this race of giants comes from. Can we tie them down to a particular group? And so I argue that they come from the Near East, from this Egyptian, Israelite, Egyptian Hebrew a hybrid, which itself goes back to the earliest giants of antiquity.
Yeah. What did they actually look like? Besides tall and double set of teeth and things like that.
Yeah, so we have different giants from basically in North America. So some of them have elongated skulls. Some of them look just like human, basically have the bone structure of your modern Homo sapien, but just bigger, of course. I think that with the Egypto-Hebrew giants, as I like to call them, Egypto-Israelite giants who migrated to North America, you see the exact same type of in my opinion, psychic ability, psychic usage that you find in the old world throughout Europe. So if I had to, I'm a horrible drawer, but if you told me, Augie, to paint or to draw a picture of one of these giants of North America, specifically the ones I talk about, I would say elongated skull and a very tall body. With that elongated skull used for increased brain activity to kind of do some of these psychic feats that they did.
That sounds all right. And that's what we hear in the old stories that they were able to do.
Yes,
they could affect other people, make them do things, and the other people thought it was their own doing, but maybe it wasn't.
And the other people didn't like that very much, which is why one of the reasons why the giants aren't in existence anymore, at least out in public anymore. Yes.
Yeah. And we're down to less than a minute left, and we have been talking with Professor Adam Stokes about ancient history, and we will have to have you back again. So,
it would be my pleasure.
Thank you very much. And to all the listeners out there, we'll see you next week, and be good to each other.
You've been listening to Broadcast Team Alpha.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
Hosted by Nori Love and Augie Nost. Every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The balance of power is shifting to a new paradigm. Will you be ready? For more information on Broadcast Team Alpha, as well as the hosts Nori Love and Augie Nost, please visit their website at broadcastteamalpha.com. Until next week, remember to keep those minds open while always exploring the endless quantum possibilities.
Broadcast Team Alpha. Over and out.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.